Premier League live commentary to come of that one from 8 o'clock this evening with BBC Radio London Sport on digital. But Tottenham will spend Christmas in the bottom half of the Premier League table after losing 2-1 at home to Liverpool. Thomas Frank's side finished the game with 9 players. Xavi Simons was shown a straight red card in the first half for a tackle on Virgil van Dijk. Christian Romero was shown a second yellow for kicking out at Liverpool's Ibrahima Konate late on. That was with the game at 2-1 and Spurs pushing for an equaliser.
He's knocked him over. Xavi Simons is going to get yellow carded for that. Oh, he's had a little nibble at Van Dijk's ankle, which is why Simon's gone in the book. Oh, hang on, are they going to say it was more extreme than that? See if we're going to hear from him. Here we go. Bing bong.
After review, the top number 7 withstood touches of the Liverpool player on the calf.
Xavi Simons sent off for a straight red card, and it's just got that little bit more difficult for Spurs now, who will spend the rest of the game with 10. Romero's clearance goes straight at McAllister. Isak has offloaded for Ekitike, and space here for Wirtz, who sends it forward for Isak, who scores for Liverpool as Tottenham give it away, trying to play out from the back. A quick interchange of passing finds Alexander Isak, who drives it beyond Vicario and puts the 11 men of Liverpool in front. Spurs 0, Liverpool 1. Here's Frimpong again on the right edge of the penalty area. Outside Spence, cuts back infield, cross deflected. Ekitike rising, and he's headed it in. It's 2-0 to Liverpool. The referee is being surrounded by the Spurs players, and he's brandishing yellow cards, and I think Romero, but Ekitike's head looped up in the air beyond Vicario, and has that settled this? Spurs 0, Liverpool 2, with still a quarter of the match to go. And now Porro fires this in towards the far post. Romero jumping. Richarlison goes down. A shot is going to drop to Palini, who tries to volley it into the net. Real scramble. Richarlison pulls one back for Spurs. There was all sorts going on inside that penalty area. Liverpool could not get it clear, and Richarlison, with his second touch, slots it past the goalkeeper to give Tottenham a little bit of help and hope with 8 minutes to go. Spurs 1, Liverpool 2. Foul. Big kick to Spurs. Konate
battered Romero. He's on a yellow as well.
And Konate's gone down and won't get up. He's been hauled to his feet. Another yellow card is going to be shown to Romero, and he's already been booked and he's off. Romero sent off for reacting to the Konate challenge. Christian Romero sent off, and now Thomas Frank's having to guide him away from the fourth official.
Well, yes, a pretty dramatic game, it has to be said. Brought to you there by commentator Nick Godwin, and alongside him Bradley Allen. The Tottenham manager Thomas Frank told the BBC's George Cummins afterwards he didn't think his captain had let the side down.
I think in general we're dealing with a very passionate player that want to do everything for the team, which you've done many times. I think the two yellow cards is a little bit borderline. The second one is 2 big boys fighting. Konate is going through, absolutely through Kuti, and his foot landing on his head. I'm not saying that's a yellow to Konate. It's just, that physical compact. Yes, Kuti does a movement with his leg. It's not that I haven't seen that. I still see you need to feel them the moment of the game there.
It's another defeat, but you feel much better and much happier than the performance against Forest last week, and you feel like you're going in the right direction. Yeah, there's definitely a very good performance. I think the mentality and character of the team was excellent throughout the game.
Kuti, the nickname that they have for Christian Romero. By the way, if you weren't aware of that, let's speak to Chris Cowlin, host of the Spurs Chat Podcast. Good evening, Chris.
Good evening.
Before we get on to that, extraordinary game, just on Christian Romero, where do you kind of sit? Obviously, the manager, you'd kind of expect him to back up his skipper, but we've seen this before. I seem to remember doing a game where it might have been against Roma when he got sent off in the Champions League, and we know that he can be quite volatile, and that some would say that's passion and commitment. But where do you sit in terms of where it sometimes leaves the team?
Well, I don't think there's any doubt that he is a real leader, and he is a very, very passionate player and a player that everyone adores at Tottenham Hotspur Football Club. And it was a weird one because I feel like, and I think a lot of fans feel like this, particularly in this game, he did let the team down. The referee was 2 yards away and he's lashed out at Konate and he's got that second yellow card. And this was our best spell of the game. The game itself was a really boring game at times, especially in that first half, and Spurs then suddenly come alive when Javi Simons got sent off, and then when Romero got sent off, we come alive again. We were actually a better team, 9 against 11, and complimented by Arne Slot in the press conference. But with Christian Romero, this was our best spell in the game, and it just felt like he let us down in that final 15 minutes, because we could have certainly done with him in that added time. And disappointing, because we could have come back and drew that game, because Liverpool, in my opinion, were there for the taking, and we certainly needed a result going into Christmas, and we certainly need results at home, because our home form has been so poor in the calendar year of 2025 under 2 different managers.
The last 2 or 3 games, has that sort of given fans a bit more encouragement, or has it not been enough?
Well, I think that draw at Newcastle 2-2, we had 2 shots on target, and that was a big thing. We weren't having any shots on target in whole halves of games, whole 45-minute spells, and it was really frustrating the fans. But we got that 2-2 draw. It was a good point away at St James's Park, followed by a 2-0 win at home against Brentford, and then the 3-0 against Slavia Prague. And I think a lot of Spurs fans, including myself, felt that we'd sort of turned a corner and we were playing more attacking football, and things were going to get better under Thomas Frank. And then, of course, last weekend we lost 3-0 away at Nottingham Forest, a really, really poor display. Thomas Frank was heavily criticised with the subs that he made in the game. There wasn't really any creativity from Spurs whatsoever. It was just 1 shot on target from Archie Gray. And then, of course, the performance against Liverpool. But like I said, the home form this calendar year has been absolutely terrible. There have been boos at the stadium a number of times under Thomas Frank, and I think a lot of people have actually switched off to Tottenham now. Empty seats in the stadium, people have had enough. But then we're at the stage again where we moved in the new stadium in 2019, and we've had 6 permanent managers since then, and 3 interim managers. So do Spurs make another decision? Do we go down the line of now appointing another manager? Because on the podcast yesterday, we recorded a 6-hour fan show, 6 hours of fans coming on, and not a lot of people could say positive things about Tottenham right now. And it pains me to say that, because I'm a real supporter who goes home and away, and I want my team to win. I want my team to perform, and I want to see entertaining football. And there hasn't been a lot to cheer about so far this campaign.
Where do you stand on his inability to be able to play his best players in terms of the injury to Maddison, Kulusevski, Solanke, especially in that area of the field? Is that should that be taken into account for the the way that sometimes this season they've played going forward, given that he was starting from a pretty low bar with where they finished last season?
Yeah, and that almost sounds like what Thomas Frank has said. We finished 17th last season. He said that a couple of times. He's also aimed a couple of digs at the fans as well that hasn't gone down too well. Right. But you're absolutely right. And I suppose that's why I have remained a little bit more patient than a lot of other fans as well, because, you mentioned there, Maddison, Kulusevski, Solanke, it could be very, very different with those players. But you could also, throw into the argument that Ange Postecoglou last season had so many injuries, a record number of injuries in the Premier League. Certainly at Spurs. But at this stage of last season, the same games played, Ange's team had scored more goals. We conceded less goals. We'd had more shots on goal, more shots on target, more touches in the opposition box, less errors, more progressive passes, more through balls. So I think that says a lot. And when you think about there's such heavy criticism that Ange Postecoglou and his style of football, particularly in the Premier League, 22 league defeats. And I saw earlier today that Opta are predicting that Spurs are going to finish 13th. Does Thomas Frank see that as a positive? The fact that we did finish 17th last year, I think the Spurs should be aiming always for European football and always for, a top place. I just think the club need to do a lot. I think this is a collective problem. I feel like the board need to do a lot more for the manager. In terms of the quality of players coming in. I think there are a number of players at the football club at the moment that are underperforming. And I also think that Thomas Frank needs to do a whole lot more than what he's done so far, because I think that a lot of people expected a lot of, a lot more different type of football and more changes in games and perhaps faster subs. I could sit here all day and talk about Thomas Frank of what we as Tottenham fans expected. And, I'll say it again, a lot of the games have been quite boring and underwhelming.
The thing is, this is what I always think of when something like this is happening. If you're looking from the outside and you're not going to the games, you sort of say, well, look what Thomas Frank did at Brentford, give him more time. But if you're going to every game, I can totally get that that doesn't wash if you're having to sit through more defeats, more kind of performance where you're not seeing that attacking football, because you've had that for too long.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I hate talking negatively about Spurs, and I love to talk about Tottenham when we're winning, certainly. But at the moment, things are tough. Things are pretty tough, and I think that we need to have a really good and positive transfer window. Of course, there has been so much change at the football club. Not only, the manager coming in the summer, a lot of players have gone out the door. Players like Son went out the door. Of course, we've lost, the creativity, as you mentioned, in Solanke, Maddison and Kulusevski. Lots of changes at board level as well. This new structure at the club with the board. It looks like Fabio Prati might be going out the door. There's lots of rumours about that. And he's only just come back as sporting director. So there has been so many changes. I just feel like we need a little bit of calmness at Spurs. And I had real hopes for Thomas Frank to bring, that stability and that calmness to Tottenham. But it just seems a bit chaotic at the minute.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. But it's one of those where he would have just wanted to have a good run at the start with injuries, and he's not been able to. He's been denied that. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens in January. Chris, great talking to you. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much. Cheers.
Chris Cowlin, host of the Spurs Chat Podcast, speaking to us there about Tottenham being in the bottom half of the Premier League after that 2-1 loss at home to Liverpool at the weekend. Was certainly better. Despite having 9 men at the end, it was certainly better than the defeat at Nottingham Forest, where they were beaten by 3-0. Forest